Oop. A heavy stack of books. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself in every single video. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today I am going to do my September reading wrap up, and first of all I'm going to put this stack of books down because they're very heavy. Let's start from the beginning of the month of September when I read The Secret History by Donut Hart. First of all, this book is massive, but it was so worth it. This book made me really excited to read Donut Hart's other books, and I would highly recommend it for the full season specifically. If you were thinking on picking up this book and you were kind of intimidated by its size until now, I highly suggest the audiobook version that is narrated by Donut Hart herself. Her voice is absolutely amazing, and the voice that she makes for Bonnie will live in my head rent-free because she kind of sounds like doing an impression of Mickey Mouse when reading Bonnie's dialogue, and it's so funny. And if you already read the book, you know that makes so much sense for Bonnie. So The Secret History by Donut Hart is absolutely amazing. This has become one of my favorite books, not even of this year, but in general. This was an absolute joy to read. The Secret History by Donut Hart. Next up, I'm sorry for the glare, there we go. Next up, I have read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Here I have a really cool illustrated edition of this classic at this point. I hope you're able to see because I can't see the viewfinder. But yeah, I have finally read Frankenstein, and this was not exactly what I imagined it to be. I have a reading vlog of me like reaching my Goodreads reading goal for this year, and I started that video with this book. This was not my favorite, but I've learned some things from this one. For example, I did not know that Frankenstein is not actually the name of the monster, but it's actually the name of the professor that created the monster, Dr. Victor Frankenstein. I mean, he's not actually a doctor, but you got a point. And in this book, the monster doesn't have a name, and it really begs the question, who really is the monster? Is it the creature that Frankenstein created, or is it Frankenstein himself? Who knows? Also, this has some information on Mary Shelley herself, something that I didn't know prior to reading this book. She actually wrote this book while she was really young, probably like 16, 18, something like that. And for this book to become the massive classic and massive inspiration for the Gothic horror genre is so crazy and mind-boggling to think about. The genius of Mary Shelley was able to create this while being so young. So yeah, this is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Staying in the same Gothic horror kind of genre, I have read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, and I enjoy this book so much. I am so excited to read other T. Kingfisher books because this was so up my alley. It was fast-paced, it was short, and it is frightening, but not in the way that you think. And I kept thinking about these characters and about this book for a long time after I read this. So if you want like a very short horror book that is spooky but not like super spooky, I would recommend this one, What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Okay, by this time in the video, you can kind of see what was my general mood throughout the month because I kept reading these like very short horror-y kind of books. The next one, I don't know if you can actually see the title, but it is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is, again, a very short book about this family who had a traumatic past, and we are following Mary Cat. She's currently 18, and she lives in this town where everyone hates her. She is living together with her older sister and their uncle. They're kind of like the Addams family. Like our main character is giving off Wednesday vibes, and the uncle is kind of giving Uncle Fester. So basically, we're just following Mary Cat, who is living in the aftermath of their entire family, with the exception of her sister and their uncle, being poisoned with sugar laced by arsenic. And her older sister was accused of actually poisoning their entire family. And now they're living very secluded in this mansion, hence the title of the book, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I kept thinking about this one after I read it. I didn't really know if I liked it or not. My only wish for it would be to have like bit more of an explanation of what actually happened when their family was poisoned, because we get the confirmation as to who did it, but we don't really know exactly why. It is heavily implied that it has something to do with abuse and trauma, but it's not said ever. And you could argue that that's the beauty of this book, that it makes you think and interpret it however you want. And again, if you're looking for like a creepy story that may potentially keep you up at night a bit, We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Next up, I have read Permafrost by Eva Baltasar. This made me a fan of Eva Baltasar. I absolutely adored this book. We are following just like a no bullshit lesbian who's trying to navigate her life. She's dealing with a lot of feelings of depression, and she is at this point in her life where she just wants to end everything. And she is, at the beginning of this book, trying to find a way to unalive herself. But this is so quick and funny, but also it has a very deep layer. We truly get to understand how our character thinks and who she is as a person, which I think is very important in this type of literary fiction work. Something that doesn't really have to do with the book itself, but more so with the process of translation. I was mesmerized by the translator's note at the end of the book. Her name is Julia Sanchez, because she's explaining in very much detail how she was able to portray or convey different translations and just like her overall process. So if you are interested in how the translation of this book was made, we have a very insightful look at the end of this book from the translator, which I found absolutely amazing. The writing is so good. It just flows. It's very lyrical and poetic, which makes sense because Eva Baltasar is first and foremost a poet. I highly recommend Eva Baltasar's work. I cannot wait to read her other books as well. Another classic that I have read in the month of September is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Nothing happened in this book, and I loved every second of it. If I would have read this one like even a year ago, I would have probably not enjoyed it, but this one was so marvelous. Daphne du Maurier's writing, atmospheric, lyrical, full of just like beautiful details that maybe are not important for the story, but I enjoyed them anyway. In this one, we are following our main character who doesn't actually have a name. We don't know what her name is, and I feel like that's such an interesting stylistic choice on the part of Daphne du Maurier, because our main character is consumed by the ghost of Rebecca. Now, our main character very early on in this book is getting married to Maxim de Winter, and Maxim de Winter's late wife was Rebecca. Our main character can feel Rebecca's presence in every chamber, in every room of the mansion, in the bed sheets, in how the people working for Max de Winter are treating her and stuff like that. Without giving too much information about this, because even though like nothing really actually happens, there are some important moments in the book where we realize that, in the wise words of Selena Gomez, everything is not what it seems, and Max may potentially have a very dark secret. Our main character, her journey throughout this book is so interesting because in the beginning, she's very not sure on who she is. She's not sure on herself. By the end of the book, our main character has such a complete 180 in terms of her personality that makes sense in the story overall and makes sense for her character arc. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, it's absolutely worth it. If you have not read it so far, please do, because it's amazing and it has this subtext of like a haunted mansion, even though it's not actually haunted. Great for spooky season. The next one, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Just by the amount of tabs that I have in this book, I am obsessed with this one. Kind of in the same way that I am obsessed with The Secret History. This is, again, a dark academia setting. We are following this cast of characters who are studying acting in college. Right at the beginning of this book, we find out that a person from this group, Oliver, was in prison for 10 years, but we don't really know what happened or why he was in prison or if he actually did the thing that he was in prison for. So this whole book, it's just Oliver explaining to the officer that imprisoned him what actually happened. We're following characters that are very entitled and insufferable, but again, throughout the book, you kind of feel for them because it's written in such a good way, and you actually start to understand that even though you shouldn't feel empathy for these people, you still do. You empathize with their situation. It is twisty. I was very proud of myself that I was able to guess the plot twist right before it happened. This is full of Shakespeare quotes and references, and even though I don't know that much about Shakespeare's work, I was still able to really enjoy my time with this book. Emma Rio has a new book that just came out. It's called Graveyard Shift, and based on the cover, it's sort of like gothic with potentially some mushroom horror in it. So I'm very excited to pick up that one when it will be available here in Romania. But until then, I will keep thinking about If We Were Villains. Next up, we have a new release by Ava Reid. It's called Lady Macbeth, and I was very excited for this book. Unfortunately, it kind of disappointed me. The atmosphere is just gorgeous in this one. The setting feels really like cool and gothic and like mysterious, very dark and eerie. But unfortunately, this felt like it didn't really go anywhere. I liked our main character and what she was trying to do. I just wanted more from this book. This is obviously inspired by Shakespeare's Macbeth and puts a focus on the wife, hence the title of Lady Macbeth. At the beginning, I was very excited for everything that was happening, but then it just kind of didn't really deliver. This was my first Ava Reid book, and I still want to continue with this author. I want to read The Study in Drowning and Juniper and Thorn. The main character is like very badass, and I just wanted more from her and her character arc. But this was just not really for me. Next up, I have read Modern Divination. This is not currently available in a physical format anymore just because it is picked up by a publisher and it's supposed to release in, I think, January 2025, if I'm not mistaken. This was indie published until now, and I decided to give it a go because I understood it's kind of like a dark academia setting with just like witches and like dark, gloomy things happening. And unfortunately, this book got me so mad because it started very slow and we reached a point in the book where things kind of picked up. But then again, it just went nowhere. The dialogue between the characters, even though they were supposed to be like 20 something, 21, 22, it truly felt like a 13-year-old talking to another 13-year-old. It just didn't feel genuine to the characters that the author was trying to convey. Also, the plot. What plot? I didn't really care for the plot. Nothing really happened, and I felt like we were just trying to set up this mystery that didn't really pay off in the end. This is part of a series, but I just don't really care, unfortunately, for the next books that are going to be released. This book, being indie published, I truly do believe it would benefit some editing, and I hope the actual like traditionally published version will include a lot of editing, because there were a lot of details that were just not relevant for the plot at all, and they just added to the word count without actually delivering anything in the end. This is a pretty long book. Like, I think it's 400 pages or like even a bit longer. It's kind of hard to gauge because I read it on my Kobo. But yeah, unfortunately, this was not for me. Another book that kind of flopped for me personally is Gallant by V. Schwab. This is the second book from V. Schwab that didn't really excite me. I have started my V. Schwab journey with The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue. I have read it like earlier in the year. And even though I liked part of that book, there was a specific timeline that I didn't really care for in that one specifically. And this one got me really excited because it has this cool, mysterious house, an orphan, a mysterious family that might potentially, supposedly have some dark secrets. I kept reading and I kept reading and I kept reading, hoping that something will happen. Nothing happened. Nothing actually happened in this one, and maybe this author is not for me. I have another book by V. Schwab. I think it's Vicious. I will continue reading V. Schwab, but if I will not enjoy Vicious either, I think I'm just gonna stop and maybe accept the fact that this author is not for me. I was not in a great mental state when I read this, so probably that added up to me not liking this book as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you read this and if you thought otherwise, if you enjoyed this. Please let me know why. I'm genuinely curious. We're back on track, baby, because next I have read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I have a full-on reading vlog for this one and the next book that I want to talk about, and the last book for this month. Intermezzo by Sally Rooney got me back on track because, as you've seen, the last books that I've read were not that great in my opinion, and this one made me excited again. In this one, we are following two brothers that are trying to deal with grief and a lot of unhealed trauma from their childhood, as their dad recently passed away and he was the one that raised them, and now they're trying to deal with their life without their dad in it. This reminded me a lot of Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. I loved Blue Sisters and I love this book. My experience with reading Sally Rooney in the past was not great. I only read Normal People and I didn't really enjoy that book, but this one, I think it's really good. It just worked for me. It felt more mature, dealing with a lot of topics of just love and grief and how these characters were navigating their feelings and emotions and romantic relationships. This book is sad, is horny, is everything I wanted it to be and more. So if you think about picking this one up, buy it and read it because it's so good. Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. And last but not least, a very highly anticipated sequel is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. This is the sequel for The House in the Cerulean Sea. I have read that book in 2020. I absolutely loved it. It gave me like Miss Peregrine kind of vibes, but like more chill, and this did not disappoint. I obviously can't say too much about it because it's a sequel, and if you have not read The House in the Cerulean Sea, I don't want to spoil you for that book. But in this one, we are following our main cast of characters from the first book as they are trying to deal with the threat of they're called dichotomy in the book, but I forget what it actually stands for. The Ministry of Magical Youth something. This is just pulling at your heartstrings. It's so beautifully done. And in TJ Klune's own words, this truly feels like a welcome back home. I absolutely love this. This is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. My camera decided to die as I was filming the outro for this video because I filmed for like more than an hour at this point. But yeah, this is the end of today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite book that you've read during the month of September. And until next time, bye everyone.